Hey, this was an interesting week. I got some comments that really made me think about some of the stuff that we do here at Totally Guitars. It is Friday, November 4th. Oh, we got through Halloween. Time to change the lights out in the front, I think. And it's getting colder. Rain is on the way. Boy, every time we hear rain is on the way in California, I think the Midwest, excuse me, is going through some nasty stuff. But here we like, oh good, it's gonna rain. Got to clean up the yard, get it ready for rain. But boy, too many years we've had to not worry about that. Want to talk about the reason that was on my mind was I got an interesting comment from somebody a while ago who bought the single lesson, or maybe the pack, the Fingerpicking Beatles pack, and really was particularly interested in my version of In My Life, the version I did a year or two ago, in the original key with the god-awful solo put in there, which, you know, makes it an 11 and in terms of songs. But the rest of the song is pretty difficult too, because I thought, well, let's try to make something more accurate than the way I played these songs when I made an album of Beatles tunes 25, oh my God, almost like 35 years ago. It was the late 80s. I did this album called A Beatles Collection that is still available if you just go to the store site, which is actually at joplinandsweeney.com. Enough sales pitch there. You can find it if you want it. So that album, when I put that together, I didn't go listen to any of the songs. I didn't even know what keys any of them were in. I just really did the whole thing by ear. And I just kind of picked a key. So In My Life turned out to be in the key of G. And I, whipped it together and recorded it. And also recorded the whole thing very fast, just a couple of days. Threw together medleys. And as I was practicing for it, I spent a few months just playing the tunes. And every day I would play through about 30 songs that I was thinking about putting in there. Let's see. There's stuff like, where is this? Even added some harmony. Anyway, and I over the years I put out arrangements. I did lessons on a few of those. I think I did Here, There, and Everywhere. Might have done Penny Lane. Anyway, and but I didn't put lessons together on very many. There's like 20 of them on the. Oh, I did Because. Beautiful tune, of course. Boy, it just worked out to be a great guitar song, finger-picking song. Anyway, my point here is get to the point. Sometimes when I did later arrangements, I wanted to be a little bit more accurate. Once I started doing lessons for Totally Guitars, I was a little more concerned with getting accurate, showing people accurately how they got played originally, instead of just the campfire way I might show somebody. I was working with a student on City of New Orleans the other day, and I says, I usually show people that in C, just have them run through it. I had no idea what key Arlo Guthrie even did it in. I was not surprised, pleasantly surprised, I guess, to dig up a video of Steve Goodman playing it, and he did it in C. And he had some stuff in there that was it wasn't really well worked out. And Arlo's version was much more polished anyhow. So I'll save that story for a whole nother day. But if you're interested, check out the how Steve got the song to Arlo. Okay, back to Beatles. And so time came, and I decided, I'm going to do a lesson on In My Life now in the original key. And try to be a little bit more accurate to get the bass line, which made it a lot more difficult. So to get to the point of why I'm telling you this story, because I have 3 or 4 others I want to get to. Somebody had bought that lesson, John, I believe it was, and then got back and said, this is too hard. Do you have an easier version? Because you had teased in that lesson that I had an easier version from the way I recorded it back in the 80s. And so luckily I do have all that written out, and I just added that tab to the lesson. That's what happened. And just this morning got back a message from him saying, thank you so much. That version is playable. So the real point of this is, don't hesitate to ask me to put up more reasonable versions of tunes. I don't know if I could do that with maybe White Bird or Trilogy or some of the ones that or Eye in the Sky. I'm talking about the solo versions, because those sort of become landmark tunes. But a lot of tunes can be put in different keys to make them a little more accessible, and there's no reason to play them in the original key. I got somebody asked me why I played Sylvia. In the key of D when the original was in F. The original was keyboards, one line, single guitar part that Jan Ackerman played in the Focus version, which is of course the original. And it was written by the keyboard player for his voice and for, he doesn't really sing in Sylvia. But, and I had messed around with it in the key of F for a couple of years, and it was just a pain. I'd play through like half of it, and my hand would be exhausted because of all the bars that I had to play and the stretches that had to happen. I'm getting older. These stretches are not as good as they used to be. Anyway, where am I going with the story? The Sylvia story. It said, so why'd you change the key? Well, F is not a good key for the guitar, and I really hadn't, and so I kind of dropped it. And then I stumbled into a video of Jan Ackerman just improvising and noodling around on an acoustic guitar. And he played a little bit of that, just like a couple notes, a couple measures in D. And that's the main theme, in case you're not sure what song I'm talking about. And the light bulb went off. It's like, play it in D, dummy. It's a guitar-friendly key. Anyhow, so I don't think I've done a lesson on Sylvia yet, but at least I did an acoustic snapshot of it that came out pretty well, I thought. So my point here is, if you're doing an instrumental arrangement of something, you're certainly not tied to the key that the original was in when you want to make it work on the guitar. But if you're singing it, then you're not even really tied to the key that the original was in either. Put it in the key you can sing it in. One of my students was here the other day working on How High the Moon. That's just 9, that's 7. Just slipped into a different key because, she came in and said, well, in the book it's in G. Les Paul did it in B flat. Ella Fitzgerald did it in E flat, maybe. Anyway, we started messing around and found the best key for her to sing it in was C. So let's just put it in C. And now she's got a tune she can play and bring to camp and all that stuff. So keys. Now, that leads me to the first thing is, if you want me to do an instrumental that is not as hard as some of the ones that I put up, put a question in the forum, because I like doing that. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on one of those, a lesson I did a few weeks ago. It was a very good year in D minor, which is a key, the original key. If I try to play the melody there, I end up with a bunch of weird chords, slightly difficult chords, E flats and things like that. And I think I talked about this on the news a couple of weeks ago. And so then I started messing around with, well, how would it work? A better guitar key is probably A minor, and it'll probably put the melody in a more reachable place. Still need a B flat chord. Okay, that's on my agenda. I hope to get that out next week because I think it's really playable and approachable. Which leads me to this week's song. I had a blast this week. Well, let me tell you about another song that came out this week. Nesh put together another cool Phil Collins tune for us called That's Just the Way It Is. And working on a few more Phil Collins tunes, kind of heading towards doing some packs. And that leads me to how I got caught up in Glen Campbell. I was looking at Glen Campbell tunes thinking, I only have 3 and I should get a few more because a lot of people really do like to get our packs. In case you don't know too, if you haven't been on the email list, I've gotten in the habit for the last 5 or 6 months have been sending out an email to our list every Saturday about what's going on, and we're running specials on a lot of every week there's like 10 or 12 packs that go on sale, which makes them really cheap. They're like 5 to 7 pack sets of songs for like under $15. So if you're not a subscriber and you want to pick up, a group of tunes by somebody, consider looking at the packs. We have like over 150 of artist packs now. So I was thinking, there's another Glen Campbell song I never got to, and I got to that a couple weeks ago. It was Galveston. And as I was listening, finding different versions of it, of course, found a version of him doing it with Jimmy Webb at a much slower pace because the song it's wistful and melancholy, and Glen's, upbeat version of it is kind of, anyway. So finished that though, and then I thought, I got to find another tune of his that I'd like to do, and I kind of ruled out his next couple of big hits. I don't know, get back to me if I'm wrong about this, but if anybody out there is interested in learning Rhinestone Cowboy or Southern Nights, this is probably not the place. Never mind. But Glen is a great guitar player. And somehow the song Highwayman crossed my mind, and I thought, that might be a good tune to add to it just because it was a Jimmy Webb song. So I thought, okay, here's how I can put together a little 5-pack of mostly Jimmy Webb stuff. But 3 or 4 of those would have been that Glen Campbell did. I did not know that Glen Campbell did it first, and 5 years later showed it to his 4 country buddies, Willie, Waylon, John, and Chris Christopherson. And they took it pretty far in the country world. But it was really cool to hear Glen doing this fast finger picking version of it, and that's what I did a lesson on that, and this gets sort of tied to the key thing because Jimmy Webb's original was in C minor, totally friendly key for a piano player, not for a guitar player. But if Glen wanted to do it in Jimmy's key, C minor, easy way to get to C minor on the guitar is put a capo at the 3rd fret and play an A minor. And as I will typically do with a song when I'm working out the chord progression and things, an album that had a lot of a 30-second diversion here. An album that had a lot of impact on me that I got 40 years ago was Dick Hyman doing all of Scott Joplin's Rags. This was a 10 LP set, I think. Yeah, because it was like 70 songs, 70 rags. And one whole side was improvisations based on them that really came out of him making a mistake. So he'd mess up something in a song, and then he would like keep playing, building on the mistake. This was fascinating to me because he was just taking off on these rags and having fun with them. So that's what I do when I'm putting together a lesson, is I start messing with it. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago as I was starting to develop it. And now I do have to finish a lesson on Highwayman that's going to go something like this. Anyway, I think that's coming up too. So next week might be 2 instrumental versions of songs that have been lessons recently. Point of this, is there even one? Is that changing keys is totally acceptable depending on your what you're doing with the song. Now, one last thing about Highwayman, and then I gotta get moving. Gotta get the rest on with the rest of the day here. As I was listening to this and listening to versions of Jimmy Webb playing it and all kinds of other people, you know what? I never got around to listening back to the Highwayman's version. But I did stumble into something that I forgot to put in the lesson because I actually didn't quite have it finished by the time I wanted to get the lesson out. And so it's an addendum. So two additional parts. I think only a few people know that a lesson on Highwayman came out a few days ago, and I didn't quite finish it, but I did sing it. So if you want to hear me stumble through a song, be sure to check out the lesson on Highwayman. Ran across a great version of it. Something like that. Turns out it was Mark Knopfler playing it with Jimmy Webb. And I had meant to kind of talk about the progression there, and didn't quite have it finished. So that's been added to the lesson now too. So there are 2 additional parts to the lesson. One, because I'd forgotten to talk about Glen's ending, which he ends it with a really cool, flashy guitar lick, right? We're doing this round and around and around. Or no, I'll be back again. He's singing the I'll be back in. And again, and again, and again. There's a little flashy lick on the guitar. Oh, and then F to G, and then... And he plays a really cool bluegrassy lick at the end that I had neglected to put in the lesson. So that lesson is complete now and has all that cool stuff in it. So let's see. Is that the end of that story? Anyhow, so I've added not as complete a lesson for playing the Mark Knopfler one because I wasn't going to tab it out. I just wanted to show people the choices he made as far as the chord progression goes, because he did some interesting things, some inversions. A with C sharp in the bass, G with B in the bass, little runs to connecting to the next chord. And that descending bass part was different. Okay, I think that is it. Enough playing, rambling, and talking and stuff today. So I will be back next week, the November 11th. Kind of an important day. There's some really exciting things that have been happening here, kind of behind the scenes at TG, that I hope to be able to share with you next week. Shouldn't even bring that up in case I can't, but we'll see what happens. I hope everybody has a good weekend and gets some guitar playing in and enjoys listening to. Be sure to check out. Oh, that video is attached to the announcement about Highwayman. I've now added the video of Knopfler and Jimmy Webb playing it. You got to listen to it. And then I have to encourage you to check out the Jimmy Webb's album 10 Easy Pieces, which is him playing just the piano and singing these fabulous tunes. I probably have plugged that in the past, but I've been making sure that I've been telling all my friends, you got to listen to this album because it's just fabulous hearing what he does. I'm out of here. See you next week.